and welcome to our second podcast on GBV and condom use today. As we continue to celebrate our 16 days of activism against gender-based violence in Eswatini with our theme, Let's End GBV Together. It's actually together, Let's End GBV Sisonke. So we're here today to end GBV and promote the use of condom use in Eswatini to protect ourselves from SRH issues and the infection of HIV and AIDS. Today, we have two guests sitting with me. They'll introduce themselves kindly and proudly, program managers of different aspects, GPV and condom use, but I'll allow the lady on my far left to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nozipo Mota Nzuza from the Ministry of Health in the Sexual Reproductive Health Program. I'm the acting program manager for the program and also the focal person for GBV health response issues. Thank you.
Greetings to everyone. I am Tulani Tetwa from AIDS Healthcare Foundation, AHF Eswatini. I am the Advocacy and Prevention Program Manager there. Thank you.
So you can see we have the experts today. Whatever questions are answered, those are the facts. So today we're talking about the correlation between GBV and condom use in Eswatini. We know what gender-based violence is. It's something that we've been dealing with as a country and as other countries, trying to hopefully eradicate it, but let's just say hopefully and trying to decrease it, and the condom use to protect ourselves, to protect our children, to protect Eswatini as a country. So our question today is, as you do your work individually, separately at different areas, what have you seen as a link, as a relation between GBV and condom use? Because we have AHF introducing the idea of condom use to our youth especially, and then there's the issue of GBV that no one can control or no one is expecting to not happen or happen. So we have that pandemic going on. I'll start with you, Nozipo. What have you seen as an observation as you work as a GBV expert in Swaziland?
But when we look into the data perspective, to say when you see people taking condoms, we are expecting less pregnancies, less STIs, less complications that you can actually think of. It doesn't correspond. It really doesn't correspond. And it leaves a lot of desire to be like, what exactly would be the challenge? And the snippets that we actually have is the negotiation of the condoms. There's power balance elements in who wants to use the condom, how to use the condom, and maybe our social perspective dynamics in how we've been socialized, who has to introduce the condoms, are women able to negotiate condom use, and when they can't negotiate the condom use, what are the trigger elements that makes a compliant to not using a condom for that moment, and the sequence of a lot of things. I think there's just a lot of SRH that needs to be had a conversation about with the population, whether it's the young people or the older people, the generation that we're living.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Tulani, taking from what Nozipo has just explained, seeing the distribution of condoms being taken by your target audience, but now with their observation, there's more increase in cases of SRH, HIV infection, STIs, and everything, meaning they're not generally used for what they are supposed to be used for. How does then AHF talk to those gaps being closed in terms of we giving you the condoms? Can they be used accordingly?
Yeah, thank you very much, Slee, and I think Nozipo has covered quite a lot. Interestingly, there's a lot of work that we are doing, not just as AHF, but as a nation at large, to ensure that condoms are widely distributed across all sexually active groups. I think over the years we have seen sexual debut decreasing. Young people as young as 13 years are already engaging in sexual activities. So it has sort of challenged us as programmers in the space to say how best can we make sure that everyone, including young people, access condoms. We've had a lot of topical discussions and dialogues with young people trying to ascertain how can we best serve them, because the issues have been in the past, we have not yet started serving them. From the types of condoms that we've been distributing to the distribution points themselves. They've been complaining that we place condoms in kiosks, in health centers and clinics, and there's always an older person, and they can't really freely go there and say, can I please have a condom? Yet they know they've already started engaging in sexual activities. So now the biggest challenge has been, where do you find young people, for instance? In schools, predominantly. Tertiary institutions. It's been easy. We've worked very well with the number of tertiary institutions. We are able to do distribution in those areas. Now there's men, there's women, there's married couples, because you will know that condoms are also a family planning commodity. They are not just about preventing STIs and HIV. They are also used as a family planning commodity. So we have tried across all these needs, across all the sexually active group, to make sure that all of them are well served. But it's difficult to make available the commodity if you have not engaged the people to understand how exactly it works and how it would work for them. We did not want to detect terms. We've done that in the past, and we didn't see an uptake. But interestingly, we've introduced different brands of condoms, and we've seen uptake, which somehow has not been visible enough in terms of the use itself. Uptake, like Nozipo said, we could relatively say it's a bit high, but condom use, it's not. There are many dynamics in most of the engagements that we've had now, coming and zeroing down to how then it relates to gender-based violence. I'll give an example. It's been a case by case. There is no scientific evidence, but I'll give an example of one issue where a lady came back to the facility. We had just recently introduced the Icon condom. Icon condom is large. It's larger, it's thinner, very attractive. It's gold. I wish I had one here, so that people would understand what I'm talking about. So,
sorry, is it a female or male?
A male condom. A male condom. So the lady saw it, it was attractive, and we thought, let me take this one home. When we got there, slightly bigger. Yes, slightly bigger. The partner was not happy, and then it was an issue.
Okay, now you want to get into the next deeper question or conversation, which is very important. Yeah?
Absolutely.
I don't know how best you can avoid it. Should I ask? Because I wanted to answer, then you also get into it.
Well, I was just citing an example as a preamble to today's topic, to say people may wonder why we are talking about GBV.
Yeah, on a snippet point of view, it's needed by our viewers. But I want to go back to today's talk. We'll come back, actually. We were discussing that we need to come back and talk about a whole lot of issues. But today, let's talk to the linkage between GBV and condom use. Now, Nozipo, you spoke about the negotiation part. Here I am being exposed to or introduced to condoms, yeah? And I just had a partner, or I have my long-term partner, but it will be our first time using this condom. I mean, what's this condom you spoke about? This new one? Icon. I just met Icon. It looks beautiful. What? I take it to my partner at home. Now, what are the issues in the negotiation process? And then what do they lead to if the outcomes are negative?
Okay. I want to tap back to what Tulane actually was talking about, to looking into the sex study, because we need to really look into the different dynamics and say from this perspective, what could be the potential GBV element, and from that element, what can actually be a trigger for an SRA unmet need as well. Mm-hmm. So when you think about power, because negotiation is about a lot of elements. One, power elements comes into play. Two, your sexual role into the whole intimate space also plays a role. Who's the negotiator? Who's the initiator? And half the time, because like I said, I do GBV clinical interventions, half the times what has been picked and indicated is our vulnerability as women to actually initiate around sex. And presumptively, because he initiates, the assumption is he also has to provide the condom. Mm-hmm. And now, when I have to provide the condom, the dynamics now also revolves around age. Yeah. As young as a 13-year-old, as he's saying, when I look at it, that's violent from just legislation without talking into what power I have or what power I don't have. That's the fact that I'm in a relationship and I'm underage. That's in itself is a big, like, black dot in there, where you now look into a lot of things. Legislatively is wrong. Mentally, the person is not even mature enough to appreciate the consequences of what they're doing. Nonetheless, it's actually happening. Who are they happening with? And when we look into the recent violence against children study, you can also see the power dynamics shift. They may be alien sex debut, but who are the common denominators in the sex debut? Lately, it's looking like it's the boy child. And now, while the girl child is also in a vulnerable space, who is she dating? And intergenerational sex is coming into space. Commercializing from a relationship perspective, commercializing. You know, when you start commercializing, there's an element of objectifying a lot of things from a male perspective. So once there's commercial benefits, there's always the part that says, I've got to give. I was shocked at some point, I think a couple of weeks back, looking at young people having a conversation. And you know what was a trigger for me to say, we need to dig deeper into the situation. How exactly socially can we come in? Because as health, we've done a lot. Yeah. And as health, we're really doing a lot. But the problems are deeper seated in the social space. Yeah. Now, this is kind of a conversation, kids. I'm going to be attending and prompting, and he's asking me if I take a drink, and I'm not taking a drink, but he's negotiating that I must, and I'm like, okay, what do you want in return? And I'm thinking, and I'm like, maybe anything, but don't. It shouldn't be a beer, but anything. And then I'm also like, what do you want in return? Should you ask? That's the conversation. Should you ask? And she comes and says, but I think I might be who's all good looking. You see, the perspective is shifting.
Exchange something.
Yes, absolutely.
From the opposite, there has to be a benefit to the recipient. He's good looking. Is that enough? And if he's good looking and he's already providing, how much power as a young person would you have to actually negotiate the condom? Consequentially, it will be somebody who's going to oppose that power, either financial, either emotional blackmail, to make sure that you understand why he doesn't want to use a condom. And it also might end up in physical violence, or probably what we're actually seeing in the papers these days, femicide. Maybe she's strong-minded, she wouldn't want to go ahead with whatever it is. It might be offending to the other person. Those are things that we don't know as yet, what is really, really, really happening. But from that perspective, age element comes in, mental elements come in. The social comfort zone to saying sex is just a one-sided initiation situation. And I think we need to come in and really have a deeper end to saying, as a woman, what role can you play in the condom negotiation? Is it a pause moment or is it a continuity moment? I used to have a colleague that is so raw around sex issues. We'll be like, why are we posing? Why don't I take the initiative, introduce condom as part of the foreplay? But now when you come to the foreplay and you look at the other perspective from the male to saying, must somebody do and participate in what I feel is a masculine value into the situation, or must I go the whole 9 yard? Now, going the whole 9 yard, remember, I'm SRH as well. When we tap into sex, you know, that pause moment is sort of like a button down kind of thing and a button up kind of thing.
Yeah.
So we need to have that conversation to saying, when we negotiate about the condoms and the power play that comes in and the rounds that are coming in and the potential package that you brought into space, how practical are we? It's like we don't get to know each other to saying, are you a highly sex person? Are you a sexually exploring person? It's like it's a discovery along the way. So it's bound to create a bit of conflict. Yeah.
So, but from an AHF, thank you for that, Nozipo. Power relations, whole new dynamic. Get into a relationship when you're maturely ready to deal with such issues, maturely ready to negotiate, to stand firm.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, standing firm also sometimes leads to being killed. Unfortunately, because of. But from an AHF point of view, how then do we deal with such? You introduced the idea of early debut, sexual debut, yeah. But then, what are we saying as AHF to the young people in Eswatini in terms of introducing yourself or introducing sex into your life at an early age leads to? I don't want to preamble your response, but what are the programming analysis or sites to talk into those issues?
Okay. I think when I started speaking, I spoke about how sexual activity happens across a number of different age groups. The fact of the matter is, for young people, we always advocate that they should delay sexual debut. Abstain for as long as they can until ideally they are mature and ready to handle the consequences. Because the consequences are there. Unplanned for pregnancies, you are not even economically fit enough to handle whatever issues that may come about. So we still continue to speak strongly to that, but we are also mindful of the fact that we have those young people that are already sexually active. So the discussion there is be consistent in terms of condom use. Be consistent. The dynamics are a lot. I mean, we could point out poverty. We could point out peer pressure and the love for finer things.
Yeah.
You know, the issues are there. They are different. And how I wish our conversation, Nozipo, even from a national perspective, can start drumming the sense of responsibility amongst all the men. You get what I mean? Because it will always be difficult. We've empowered young women and adolescent girls, skills, knowledge. We continue to do so. But it will always be a struggle in the era or space of intergenerational sexual relationships. I'll make an example. If, as a blesser, I pay for your hair, your nails, I pay for the hotel that we are going to meet at, maybe for a weekend or overnight, how possible is it for you then to tell me, as a young person, as my sexual partner, how the sexual activity is supposed to happen?
There's no
It calls for me, as a blesser, or as an older man in that intergenerational relationship, to take some sense of responsibility, to understand that there are consequences of not using condoms.
Yeah.
This young person might fall pregnant. This young person might get an STI, HIV even. Let me love her enough in whatever space that we are in to protect him. Because they will try to negotiate for safe sex. But there is a catch in the relationship itself. I want the Peruvian hair because my friends have it.
All these things.
I want the nails because I want to be relevant.
Yeah.
Sometimes I need the money because back at home, I'm from a child-headed household, or I have a grandma, who's blind, or a grandma who's trying by all means to, make ends meet by going as a market vendor, for instance. So I need the money, and here is a guy who's willing to give me the money, but now there's the issue of safe sex.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a bit of a challenge, but we are trying to navigate all of those issues. So ultimately, we are saying men should start taking responsibility. It's possible. Condoms can be part of foreplay. We have seen it. We have people that can attest to that.
Well, as a country, how do we not just blab or say or tell older people? Because it's not just men.
Yeah.
We also have older women taking advantage of young boys. And the power dynamic is at play as well. We cannot just say it. We think we're talking to older people who will take the next step of taking action. Yeah? It's not your call personally, but as a ministry, representing the ministry, how best do you think we can push this idea of being responsible, or even step back to say or remind older people that a child is your child as well?
Sure.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier on, this is a deeper conversation. And when I say a deeper conversation, I'm talking realistic facts. I'm talking not us being hush-hush, trying to be economically truthful to certain elements. I'm talking about us being realistic as much as possible. And I'm talking about us trying to say, how do we synergize the past and the present and the external influences that are actually at play? Because we shouldn't, we should actually appreciate that we have a lot of external factors as well. You look at media, we're doing a podcast. Who's controlling what we're saying? Nobody. Should we really be controlled to start with? No, at all, And then we're looking into certain programs that are populated out there. Teen mom and pregnancy, a mom pregnant with a teen pregnancy, being virtualized and made a realistic thing, coming into the real wise issues that it's a lot socially out there that our kids have access to. Tulane was tapping into something very critical. Blessers are not a new face.
No.
We grew up with the blessers time too. We found the blessers, and our kids are finding the blessers. The different dynamics will be what you're saying. Your child is my child. When you look into this young kid, don't you see your own child in this young kid? And you have to rationally think what could have happened to you. And I think in the times where blessers were there, the part that made it difficult for most, because it's not like everybody was safe, for most was knowing that if the parents were part of this, we tend to drive a lot of the rights factor. And I'm glad to see even the human rights end is now pitching up with the responsibility aspect. Because as a man, he may have a responsibility to acknowledge certain things, but what are we crafting to our children as well? Where's the responsibility aspect? Where do you get to acknowledge the responsibility? That comes now again to saying the age factor and mental maturity is also at power play. A bigger responsibility goes to the man because this is a child. May appreciate responsibility not to the extent that you actually have to appreciate. And I think the disadvantage in the whole thing is this is not just isolated to young people in terms of the GBV aspect. Power, and I still go to say, power elements our biggest hole in terms of the GBV. Everybody wants to be seen relevant, whether in isolation or in the obvious. The third part is in the isolation, it becomes the obvious because now we get to see the sediments of GBV playing out as real as it can be. So when I say the conversations needs to be had, I was talking to saying, do we as one of the vulnerability, do we even know what we're doing when we're having sex? Chelanes tapped onto, she came with the condom and it was big.
Beautiful.
Now it's a trigger to somebody else. You don't know what emotionally goes on when somebody comes in and feels inadequate. I would like to use the word inadequate. I don't like to say it was big word. You feel like you're inadequate.
Yeah.
But whose perspective are you using? Are you mindful of somebody's emotional intelligence as well as you actually now start unpacking the whole thing? Are you mindful of your own limitations intellectually to like, can I rationally be the bigger person and not show that I'm feeling vulnerable at this point? Because the lady might have not thought about it, but the man did.
Yeah.
You know? And when he did, he didn't think she's not thinking what I'm thinking. He assumed he's thinking. So you see so many triggers.
Yeah.
We've talked about finances. We've talked about, do you even know what we're doing? And we've talked about negotiation. Who is supposed to bring the condom? Why is it supposed to be men? Why can't women bring the condom? Who said we need to interrupt the session? Why can't we blend it into the whole session? If
there shouldn't be a pause because it disturbs the whole thing.
Everybody has a role.
Yeah, yeah.
And then now you come in and say, we have legislations. Are they toothless? Are they playing right? And who's in control? And for me, what I've actually observed from the clinical space, us adults are the barriers to the implementation of the legislation fully. You see a mother's telling a service provider, I don't want this situation getting out of hand. I'm here for my child for
just to control
care,
this.
for control. But we don't play like that because there's legislation. We make sure they understand. Social welfare and law enforcement are going to be notified about the situation. But now, us having the power to say we are going to report doesn't undertone that the mother from a social space is already, not just the mother, the family from a social space, they're already trying to pocket this and saying, if we do this, what will we benefit and what will we lose?
We are less than 20 seconds down. I wanted Tulani to close on education part because you said you do have access to kids. But now you just touched on something. It's more of a family thing that needs to be touched to. What can or how can we touch down to the basics so that GBV and condom use is spoken to at family level?
So yes, absolutely. We want to tap into family structures. Family structures, I would say they are quite broad. You will find that there are single parents, there's a mom and a dad, there are grandparents. Some of these young people live with guardians. But we have tried in the past to tap into all the structures. We've worked with churches. It has a good family structure. We've gone to communities, grassroots. We've spoken to leaders in communities. As a nation, I think we are at an advantage because we are still able to parent our neighbor's child. When you see that something is not going right, you are able to, through whatever community structure, to speak to young people within that community. And I think a family structure is a space where we really, really must, intensify the conversation, not just about condoms, but also around SRH issues at large, because that is where also you will find the snippets of gender-based violence. It starts somewhere and then it grows and balloons into something that is uncontrollable. Interestingly, as Emaswati, we have a saying that says "Ilkotshwa Semant," but I feel like we have sort of drifted away from that. The conversation starts very late because we have this assumption that still too young to talk to about sex, about condom use, about gender-based young people. The conversation starts very late. Yet we know our young people in nowadays are more exposed than we used to be. In our times when we grow up, and this is not to expose my age, but there were no cell phones. There was very little use of Google as a search engine. There was no social media, and so to speak. We relied on novels, we relied on magazines and all of that. But let's bring back the culture of speaking to these issues within the family structures, within communities. We have the advantage of social media even. And schools, tertiary institutions, that's a rich platform. How I wish life skills or sexual skills education can be adopted fully within the curriculum in the Ministry of Education.
So that you can talk to these issues.
It's a rich platform where we could speak to young people about these issues. And surely we will see a decrease once we take that approach.
Thank you for that, Tulani. I think a lot is being done for young people, and we close it right there. Thank you very much.